Hi everyone, this is Veronica. Today we are going to take up this topic that how we can prevent mob lynching. What is mob lynching? We'll discuss it in detail. For my video updates and queries, you can connect with me on Instagram and Facebook because I feel together we can make a difference. Now see what is the relevance of this topic. It could be asked in your mains paper too. At objective level, you should know what are the various laws which exist. At subjective level, you should know how we can protect vulnerable sections from mob lynching and what is mob lynching. So the context today we are studying this because the recent spate of incidents of lynching over the past few years, it has actually led to heightened sense of insecurity among the marginalized communities, and therefore the center should specify there should be a penal action against officials and doctors who are accused of dereliction of their duty. So now firstly let's discuss what is mob lynching. So lynching is premeditated extrajudicial killing by a group. So it is most often used to characterize informal public executions by mob in order to punish an alleged transgressor or to intimidate a group. Now this is basically a very extreme form of informal group social control, and often it is conducted with the display of public spectacle for maximum intimidation. So it is to be considered an act of terrorism and punishable by law. That is why I am saying mob lynching is an extrajudicial killing. So if we talk about stats, I'm not talking about the very recent stats, but just if we look at the stats of 2010 to 2017. Okay, so this in this data it is found that during the period 28 people were killed in 63 incidents. So 63 incidents of mob lynching took place and 28 people were killed. And an overwhelming 97% of these attacks took place after Prime Minister Narendra Modi's government came to power in May 2014. So this data is from 2010 to 17, but 97% of mob lynching incidents took place after 2014. So about 86% of those killed were Muslims. In 21% of the cases, police filed cases against the victims and survivors, and cow-related lynchings rose sharply in 2017. So this marks a 75% of increase over 2016, which had been the worst year for the mob lynching since 2010. So this data is available on the data website of India Spend. They have compiled this data. So these are the screenshots of case of mob violence and lynchings in 2019, or what kind of lynchings they took place. So you can just take a screenshot of this slide to know. Next, I will talk about 2018 Supreme Court judgment. See, in 2018, Supreme Court described lynching as horrendous act of mobocracy and warned against violent vigilantism propelled by prejudice and hatred. So lynching becoming the new normal. So the court exhorted the center and state governments to that they should frame laws specifically which can deal with the crime of lynching. So here Supreme Court laid down certain guidelines to be incorporated in these laws. So these guidelines were that you should have fast track trial courts also. Compensation should be given to the victims. Disciplinary action against the lax law enforcers should be taken place. So now there are certain state laws which they tried to come up with. There were certain bills certain states came up with. For example, there was Manipur bill for law against lynching. So Manipur government came up first with this bill against lynching in 2018, incorporating some logical and relevant clauses. So what they incorporated in their bill was firstly that there should be a position of a nodal officer. The bill specified that there would be a nodal officers in each district to control such crimes. Next, what Supreme Court said, they added that compensation to the victims will be added. The law provides adequate monetary compensation to the victims or their immediate kin. Third, they added punishment for failure of enforce the law. So here the punitive element they added that for the police officers who fail to prevent the crime of lynching in their jurisdiction, they are liable to be imprisoned for a term that may extend from 1 to 3 years with a fine limit of 50,000. So no concurrence of state for the prosecution of the police, because no concurrence of the state government is required to prosecute them for dereliction of duty. Then there was Rajasthan bill also, and here the government has accepted only a few guidelines issued by the apex court. No action against police officers, so they were not ready for the action against the police officers, because the bill again was silent on any action to be initiated against police officers who may be accused of dereliction of their duty. And West Bengal bill, most of other guidelines of the Supreme Court, they have been adopted by the state. And again, stringent punishment for lynching to death is punishable with death penalty of life imprisonment and a fine up to 5 lakh. They added up this particular feature also. Now, what actually the central government can do here, it could be taken as a way forward. See, adoption to the Supreme Court guidelines. The center should adopt the guidelines provided by the Supreme Court to deal with the crime. And then action against doctors. So center would do well to incorporate sections in the law for penal actions against doctors who stand accused of that they are not performing their duty when the victim is brought to the hospital, for delay in the treatment in attending the victims of lynching, and submitting false reports. In many cases we have seen that doctors have submitted false reports without carrying out a proper and thorough medical examination of the victims. So in that case, the compensation scheme for victims should be incorporated, can be incorporated by the central government, because under the compensation scheme for the victims, the amount to be paid to the victims should be recovered from the perpetrators of the crime. Then there's something called collective fines, because collective fines should be imposed on the villages where the lynching takes place. This will act as a deterrence. And then punishment for political leader for inciting the mob. This is very simple, because center could even provide a punitive action against political leaders who are found guilty of inciting mobs. Then, because ultimately such provocations, they lead to the lynching. Then punitive action against police, because punitive action to be taken against police officers accused of absence from the duty or delay in the duty or dereliction in duty, it can be incorporated in the law enacted by central government, as is done by the Manipur government. So it could be replicated in the central law too. Then punitive action as a deterrent. It would deter police officials acting in partisan manner in favor of the lynching mob, because in some cases it has been seen. So what we can conclude here is that until we adopt a zero tolerance approach, we actually need a zero tolerance attitude. It has to be adopted in dealing with mob lynching. Until it is done, this crime will continue to show a rising trend. See, what are the reasons why this kind of incidents they take place? So I have just included few, and then we'll discuss the effect of lynching also on state, society and economy. If we look, first reason could be impunity. Major reason for the recent rise in lynching is your impunity. These lynch mobs that murdered several people, they were confident of getting away with it. So far, if you have seen, the state has done very little to shake that confidence. Then the problem is not the mob lynching per se, but the mob lynching of minorities, for that is where impunity kicks in. So in this case of cow-linked lynchings, a lot depends on whether the incumbent in power considers it compatible with the political interest to crack down on such attacks. So it is totally about the political will also. Then the fake news. Another factor which gave rise to lynching is the spread of fake news through social media platform. Then modernity. With modernity, there is growth of individualism and an erosion of associational life. So associations encourage us to appreciate others' culture and moderate our aggressive instincts. So these are the few things. And then obviously unemployment, because high unemployment rates leave millions of youth unengaged. So that is one of the biggest reason for such lynchings also. So then if we talk about effect of lynchings, what is the effect on state? What is the effect on society? What is the effect on economy? So it is against the values which are upheld in Constitution of India. If you talk about the state, every individual has certain fundamental rights, and violence would be curtailment of this right and no regard to law and order in society. So this may lead to growth of feeling of subnationalism, which should not be there. Nationalism is good, but subnationalism is not good. And radical and extremist organizations such as ISIS, etc., they could obviously take leverage of atmosphere created by such incidents. Then talking about society, this impacts solidarity of the society and the idea of unity in diversity. So this create an atmosphere of majority versus minority. So it could aggravate caste, class and communal hatred. Then coming to your economy, lynching, it totally destroys the social fabric of the country, which indirectly affects the economy of the country, because it directly hampers internal migration, which in turn affects your economy. And large resources deployed to tackle such menaces, they induces extra burden on state exchequer also. So these incidents would lead to selective distribution of investment, and it could actually impact your regional balance. So let me talk here. Are the anti-lynching law, are they enough? Because we don't have a separate law for it, but yes, it is covered under ambit of other laws. First, if we talk about if such an law will be introduced, is it enough? So you can say its success depends upon its implementation. That is one. But here, what the main thing I want to talk about is that already there are enough provisions to deal with lynchings. I will just write them down. There are the provisions under IPC, Indian Penal Code. For example, you have section 302, which is murder, right? You have section 304, which is culpable homicide not amounting to murder. I will write it here, culpable. Okay, section 302 murder, 304 culpable homicide not amounting to murder. Then you have section 307, that is attempt to murder. You have 34 acts done by several persons in furtherance of common intention. So we have already few sections where mob lynching could be dealt with, but these need to be implemented strongly and effectively. Or what we can do, we can amend the existing laws also. First of all, we don't have something which defines hate crimes in detailed manner. The only section which we can bring into picture here is section 153A. The Parliament can consider making necessary amendments with the penal code instead of drafting a separate law for it. These things could be done. If you don't want to bring a separate law, you can amend, you can implement these things strictly. So for way forward, we can talk about that government should criminalize the act of mob violence. This is one thing. Or you can already, what we talked about, amend the already existing laws, or you can implement them strongly. Then awarding of penalties on public servants for failing to investigate properly. That is what Supreme Court has also suggested. Establishment of special courts for the trial of mob violence. Again, Supreme Court has suggested. Empowering local law enforcement officials to take preemptive action. And there needs to be continued responsiveness on the part of local administration, because local administration actually plays a very crucial role. Then you need to strengthen the civil society. You can talk about civil society here also. You can talk about reorienting values and traditional principles towards enhancing compassion. Then you have to find productive engagement avenues for large unemployed or underemployed youths also, because for such mob lynchings, you will never see anyone who is employed that they are a part of mob. If you'll see, majority of the people who are part of this mob, they are unemployed people. Then police reforms are also vital, along with the sensitization drive to make transformational changes in their behavioral and attitude approach towards tackling of crime. So such as the things are to be adopted for the way forward if you want to prevent mob lynching. So this is all about today's lecture. If you have any queries, you can contact me on social media. The PDF of this lecture will be available on my Telegram, that is t.me/Veronica_Om. Thank you.